I was driving late one night, the kind of night where everything feels heavier than it should. The air outside was cool, and the windows of my car had just a faint trace of fog on the edges. My headlights stretched across the blacktop like thin white tunnels, cutting through the darkness, and beyond that narrow beam of light was nothing but black emptiness. The radio had been turned down low, just background noise, but mostly it was the hum of the tires and the faint whistle of air around the car that kept me company. It was one of those stretches of road where you could drive for miles without seeing another set of headlights. I'd taken this route 100 times before, but at night it always looked different. The same fields and trees that looked so plain during the day suddenly felt like walls closing in around the road. The shadows moved differently in the corners of my vision, and every once in a while I'd catch myself glancing into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something back there. I don't know if it was nerves, tiredness, or just the way the darkness plays tricks, but it always made me uneasy. That's when it happened. Just ahead, maybe 20 yards or so down the road, my headlights caught the shape of something right in the middle of the lane. It was small, low to the ground, but very clear. It looked like a cat. For a split second my heart jumped, and my foot hovered over the brake. I swerved just slightly, enough to avoid hitting it, but not so much that I'd lose control. As the car straightened back into the lane, I glanced in the mirror. Nothing moved. No animal darted off into the woods. It hadn't flinched, it hadn't run. It just stayed there. I frowned, my hands tightening on the wheel. That didn't make sense. Cats move fast, especially when a car comes at them. I kept driving, but my mind was already running back over what I'd seen. The shape of it, the way it had looked almost too perfect in the headlights. Its eyes had shined in the light, but not the way normal animal eyes shine. These looked flat and round, like coins catching the light. A mile or so later, I saw another one. Same position, same stillness, sitting square in the middle of the lane. My stomach tightened, and this time I slowed down enough to get a good look as I passed. And that's when I realized what it was. It wasn't a cat at all. It was a cutout, a flat piece of cardboard shaped like a cat, with pennies glued on for eyes. My headlights hit the copper and made them gleam, and at first glance it looked just like a real animal frozen in the beam. The realization made my skin prickle, not because it was supernatural or anything, but because someone had gone out of their way to put it there. I thought back to the first one I'd swerved around, how easy it would have been to lose control if I had jerked the wheel too hard. I imagined someone coming the opposite way, both of us swerving at once, all because of a stupid cardboard prank. It wasn't just the danger that got to me, it was the thought of who had put them there. Someone had cut out the shapes, glued the pennies, and walked out into the middle of a dark road to set them down. It wasn't random trash or an accident. It was deliberate. That meant they knew people would see them, and they knew what kind of reaction it would cause. The more I thought about it, the worse it felt. I kept seeing more of them as I drove. One every couple of miles, each one set carefully in the middle of the road. Sometimes they leaned slightly to the side, but they were always there, waiting. The farther I went, the more I started to dread the next one. My eyes strained against the dark, trying to catch the faint outline before the headlights revealed it. Each time, my body reacted before my brain could remind me it was fake. My muscles would tense, my heart would beat a little harder, my foot would twitch on the brake. After the fourth or fifth one, I realized I was gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. My shoulders were tense, and I had that buzzing feeling behind my eyes like I hadn't blinked in a long time. I started thinking about what would happen if someone less experienced, or just more tired than me, drove through here. Someone who panicked and swerved all the way off the road. Out here, with the ditches deep and lined with trees, it wouldn't take much. One wrong move and a car could flip. I couldn't shake that thought, and it made the prank seem less funny and more twisted. By the time I reached the end of that stretch of road, I was exhausted from the constant vigilance. My hands ached, my eyes burned, and every time I saw a patch of shadow across the pavement, I braced myself for another cardboard cat. Even when they stopped appearing, I couldn't relax. My body stayed locked in that tense, alert state, as if something else might still be waiting out there. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a while before going inside. The engine ticked as it cooled, and the night outside was still and quiet. Normally, I found that silence peaceful, but after what I'd just driven through, it felt heavy and unsettling. My headlights lit up the front of my house, and I found myself staring at the patches of shadow along the porch, half expecting to see a cardboard shape waiting there too. I knew it was just kids, probably bored teenagers pulling what they thought was a harmless prank. But all I could think about was how close I'd come to jerking the wheel too hard on that first one. How easy it would have been to end up in a ditch, or worse, all because someone thought it was funny to make people swerve. The drive stuck with me long after. For weeks, every time I saw something in the road at night, trash, a shadow, even a real animal, I had that same surge of fear, that same jolt in my chest. It was like my body had been trained to expect danger every few miles. Even now, I can't drive a dark, empty stretch of road without thinking about those cardboard cats and the copper glint of their eyes catching my headlights. That night made me realize something. Danger doesn't always come from what you expect. Sometimes it isn't the wild animal darting into the lane or the drunk driver swerving out of nowhere. Sometimes it's just a piece of cardboard, placed by someone who thought it would be funny. But when you're driving alone in the dark, at highway speed, that's all it takes to turn an ordinary night into something that could change your life forever. And that's the thought that stayed with me when I went inside, locked the door, and tried to sleep. It wasn't ghosts or monsters in the dark that kept me awake. It was the idea of how fragile everything really is, and how a simple, careless prank could have been the last thing I ever saw. I had been on the road for hours that night, the kind of drive where the world shrinks down to the glow of your headlights and the soft hum of your tires. The highway had long since thinned out into back roads, and then into stretches of two-lane blacktop where you could drive for miles without passing another car. No streetlights, no houses, no gas stations. Just me, the asphalt, and the dark. I was tired. Not the kind of tired where you yawn and keep moving, but the kind that settles into your bones after a long day. My eyes felt heavy, my shoulders tight from gripping the wheel. I kept rolling the window down for cold air, turning the vents full blast, anything to stay sharp. My phone sat on the passenger seat, no service showing. I told myself I was fine, that I just needed to keep going a little longer, but in the back of my mind, I knew I was stretching my limits. The silence was absolute. I had no music, no voices on the radio, just the sound of the engine and the tires. The world outside was pitch black, the kind of dark that swallows everything except what my headlights reached. Even then, it felt like I was tunneling through the night, only able to see 30 yards ahead while everything else pressed in close. Then I saw it. At first, it was just a shape at the edge of the light, a figure. My brain reacted before I could even process it. I hit the brakes hard, the seatbelt locking across my chest as the car jerked and the tires squealed against the pavement. My heart jumped into my throat as I stared ahead, convinced I was about to hit a person standing in the middle of nowhere. The car skidded to a stop just a few yards short of it. I froze, knuckles white on the steering wheel, pulse pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. The figure didn't move, just stood there, tall and rigid. My headlights lit it up in stark detail, and slowly, painfully, I realized what I was actually looking at. It wasn't a person. It was a cardboard standee. For a few seconds, the absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Almost. But the longer I stared, the worse it felt. The cutout was set perfectly in the lane, facing me dead on, like someone had gone out of their way to place it there just to make me slam my brakes. The expression on its face was frozen in that artificial smile, and the flat edges gave it away as cardboard. But that didn't make it any less unsettling. In fact, it made it worse, because now my mind shifted from relief to realization. Someone had set this up. Someone had carried this thing out into the middle of a dark, deserted road, in the middle of the night, and planted it where the next driver would have no choice but to react. My stomach turned as the possibilities hit me. If I had been going faster, I might have swerved instead of braking. If I had jerked the wheel, I could have ended up in the ditch, flipped the car, or slammed into a tree. Out here, alone, with no cell service, that could have been the end. All because someone thought it would be funny. I inched the car forward, steering around the cutout carefully, not wanting to look at it longer than I had to. As I passed, the side view made it look even more grotesque, flat against the night, casting a long, awkward shadow on the asphalt. I pressed the gas harder once I cleared it, eager to put distance between me and the thing. But I couldn't shake it. My brain kept circling back to the thought. Someone put it there, deliberately. That meant they had stood in this exact spot in the dark, setting it up, maybe even waiting nearby to see what would happen. My headlights only reached so far. Beyond them was nothing but black, and I couldn't shake the image of someone standing just out of sight, hidden in the tree line, watching me slam on the brakes. The road stretched on, but my focus stayed razor sharp now. Every mailbox, every road sign, every shadow at the edge of the pavement made me tense. I kept imagining another cutout waiting around the bend, or something worse. My hands were tight on the wheel, and I realized I was holding my breath without meaning to. What gnawed at me most wasn't the scare itself. It was the thought of what could have happened. If I had lost control, if another car had been behind me, if I hadn't noticed the flat edges in time, it would have been written up as an accident, another late-night crash on a lonely road. And whoever set that thing up, they'd be safe at home, maybe laughing to themselves, never having to face what they caused. I thought about how stupid it would be to end my life that way, not from some freak act of nature, not from anything I could blame on bad luck, but from someone's prank. The kind of prank people might call harmless if it didn't kill anybody. And if it did, if someone swerved off the road and died, that so-called harmless prank could put the person who set it up in prison. The more I thought about it, the angrier I felt. Anger mixed with the fear, making my chest tight. People underestimate how thin the line really is between funny and deadly. They don't think about how fast things happen on the road, how little time you have to react when something appears in your headlights. They don't think about what comes after. The mangled car, the paramedics, the family getting a call in the middle of the night. I drove faster than I probably should have, just to get away from that stretch of road. By the time I saw the glow of a town up ahead, the faint halo of streetlights against the sky, I felt like I had been holding my breath for miles. When I finally rolled into a lit area with real signs of life, I exhaled hard, my grip loosening on the wheel. I made it home that night, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The image of the standee stuck in my mind, frozen in my headlights, waiting. I thought about how easily I could have been another statistic, how my family would have gotten that call, how people would have shaken their heads and said I must have fallen asleep at the wheel. Nobody would have known about the cardboard cutout planted in the dark, except for the person who put it there. And that's what chilled me most of all. It wasn't a ghost, it wasn't some creature in the night, it was people. People who thought they were being clever or funny, or maybe worse. People who didn't care what the cost might be. Now, whenever I hear about someone setting up pranks like that, I think back to that night and how close it came to going bad. It might sound like fun. It might get a laugh when you tell the story later. But if someone crashes, if someone dies, if investigators trace it back to you, well, that's not funny anymore. That's a prison sentence. That's a life on your conscience. And for me, it's a memory I won't ever forget. The night the road was empty, the silence was absolute, and a stupid prank reminded me just how fragile life can be when you're alone in the dark at 70 miles an hour. It was late, much later than I wanted to be out, but I had no choice. Work had kept me past midnight, and the only way home was a long stretch of back highway that cut through woods and farmland. It was the kind of road that felt forgotten. No streetlights, no gas stations for miles, just cracked pavement and the occasional reflective sign catching your headlights. I wasn't tired, but I felt that strange mental fog that comes from being awake too long. My brain wasn't firing on all cylinders. The hum of the tires and the faint vibration through the steering wheel were hypnotic. I kept the radio low just to have some background noise, though it barely helped. I was alone, moving through miles of black nothing, and all I wanted was to get home. Then my headlights picked up something on the shoulder ahead. A car, old, beaten up, parked just a little too close to the ditch. The hazard lights weren't on, no signs of anyone moving around it. Just a dead machine sitting there in the dark. Normally I'd slow down, maybe even stop if I thought someone needed help, but something about it made me uneasy. The car looked like it had been left in a hurry, doors shut tight, not a window cracked. I kept driving, telling myself it was probably just abandoned. Not even 5 minutes later, another car. Different make, different color, same situation. Pulled off on the shoulder, no hazards, no people. My stomach tightened. 2 broken down cars within a few miles on an empty road wasn't right. I gripped the wheel a little harder, fighting off the urge to glance too long at the mirrors. A memory crept into my head, something I had read online not long before. A post about how the perfect crime these days wasn't something brilliant or complex. It was just not advertising yourself. Everyone was so eager to post their lives, even the awful parts. Half the crimes you heard about ended up solved because someone couldn't resist bragging online. Pictures, videos, status updates, it was like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs straight to themselves. But the story I read had pointed out how dangerous someone could be if they didn't do that, if they stayed quiet, if they never left a trace on social media, never broadcasted what they were doing. Those people were invisible in a world where everyone else was screaming for attention. The road stretched on, and the trees pressed in on both sides. My high beams threw the shadows deep into the branches, and I kept scanning them, half expecting to see movement. I told myself I was just rattled from work and the late hour. But then I came around a bend, and there it was, another car. This one had its trunk open, and even from a distance, I could see something dark inside. I slowed down without meaning to, my eyes straining to make sense of it. The shape in the trunk didn't move. It didn't even look right, but I couldn't tell if it was bags, junk, or something worse. My heart thudded so loud I could feel it in my throat. Then I pressed the gas again, forcing myself to pick up speed, telling myself not to look too hard. But I did look. My mirrors caught a glimpse as I passed. For just a split second, the beam of my taillights hit the open trunk, and I swore I saw the pale curve of an arm hanging at the wrong angle. I didn't slow again. I didn't stop. My body went cold, my knuckles bone white on the wheel, and I kept driving like the road itself might collapse if I hesitated. I wanted so badly to convince myself I had imagined it, that it was just a trick of the light, but deep down I knew I hadn't. The road twisted and turned, mile after mile, and the silence in the car grew heavier. Every dark patch ahead looked like another trap, another abandoned car, another glimpse of something I wasn't supposed to see. I thought about pulling over and calling the police, but the idea of stopping out there, with nothing but black trees pressing against the road, froze me. I kept thinking about that online post again, about someone who didn't post, didn't share, didn't brag. Someone who moved through the world quietly, leaving no trail. Someone like that could dump a body on a back road, set up fake breakdowns, leave traps for anyone foolish enough to stop. And nobody would know who they were because they didn't exist online. They'd be a ghost in a world obsessed with being seen. By the time I saw headlights behind me, I was already on edge. They appeared suddenly, far too bright, closing the distance fast. My chest tightened, and I pressed the gas a little harder, watching as the car grew larger in the mirror. It was a beat-up sedan, dark-colored, nothing special, but it was gaining on me. I told myself it was just another driver, maybe someone in a hurry, but the speed of it, the way it hugged my lane without pulling to pass, made me sick with dread. For a few minutes, it stayed right behind me, so close I could see the reflection of its lights bouncing around the inside of my car. Finally, after what felt like forever, it backed off. Not by much, but enough that I could breathe again. Still, it followed me. Every curve, every stretch of straight highway, it stayed there. Not trying to pass, not falling away, just following. My mind wouldn't stop running circles. What if it was connected to the cars I'd seen? What if whoever was out there had noticed me, knew I'd driven past, knew I'd seen too much? I gripped the wheel harder and focused on the road, refusing to glance at the mirror more than I had to. When I finally reached the turnoff toward my town, the car behind me slowed and kept going straight. I sat there at the stop sign for a full minute after it passed, my breathing shaky, my body trembling like I just finished running. The relief was overwhelming, but it didn't erase the images burned into my head. The abandoned cars, the open trunk, that pale shape. When I finally made it home, I didn't go straight inside. I sat in the driveway with the engine off and the lights out, staring into the dark, half expecting those headlights to appear again. The house felt safe, but the road was still out there, stretching into the black, holding its secrets. Lying in bed later, I thought again about that post. The perfect crime wasn't brilliant, wasn't flashy. It was just silence. No trail, no posts, nothing for people to latch onto. And out on that highway, with nothing but empty cars and a dark forest, I realized I might have brushed right up against someone living that silence. Someone who had no name, no face, no trail. Just shadows and bodies no one would ever see online. The scariest part was knowing that I would never know for sure. I could call the police, report what I'd seen, but even if they found something, even if it was real, the person behind it would vanish again. Because they weren't online. They weren't posting. They weren't leaving any proof behind. And that was the thought that kept me awake for the rest of the night. That the perfect crime wasn't out there in the shadows waiting for me. It was already happening, quiet and unseen, while the rest of the world was too busy watching their own screens to notice. It was late, much later than I wanted to be out, but I had no choice. Work had kept me past midnight, and the only way home was a long stretch of back highway that cut through woods and farmland. It was the kind of road that felt forgotten. No streetlights, no gas stations for miles, just cracked pavement and the occasional reflective sign catching your headlights. I wasn't tired, but I felt that strange mental fog that comes from being awake too long. My brain wasn't firing on all cylinders. The hum of the tires and the faint vibration through the steering wheel were hypnotic. I kept the radio low just to have some background noise, though it barely helped. I was alone, moving through miles of black nothing, and all I wanted was to get home. Then my headlights picked up something on the shoulder ahead. A car. Old, beaten up, parked just a little too close to the ditch. The hazard lights weren't on, no signs of anyone moving around it. Just a dead machine sitting there in the dark. Normally I'd slow down, maybe even stop if I thought someone needed help, but something about it made me uneasy. The car looked like it had been left in a hurry, doors shut tight, not a window cracked. I kept driving, telling myself it was probably just abandoned. Not even 5 minutes later, another car. Different make, different color, same situation. Pulled off on the shoulder, no hazards, no people. My stomach tightened. 2 broken down cars within a few miles on an empty road wasn't right. I gripped the wheel a little harder, fighting off the urge to glance too long at the mirrors. A memory crept into my head, something I had read online not long before. A post about how the perfect crime these days wasn't something brilliant or complex. It was just not advertising yourself. Everyone was so eager to post their lives, even the awful parts. Half the crimes you heard about ended up solved because someone couldn't resist bragging online. Pictures, videos, status updates, it was like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs straight to themselves. But the story I read had pointed out how dangerous someone could be if they didn't do that. If they stayed quiet. If they never left a trace on social media, never broadcasted what they were doing. Those people were invisible in a world where everyone else was screaming for attention. The road stretched on, and the trees pressed in on both sides. My high beams through the shadows deep into the branches, and I kept scanning them, half expecting to see movement. I told myself I was just rattled from work and the late hour. But then I came around a bend, and there it was, another car. This one had its trunk open, and even from a distance, I could see something dark inside. I slowed down without meaning to, my eyes straining to make sense of it. The shape in the trunk didn't move. It didn't even look right, but I couldn't tell if it was bags, junk, or something worse. My heart thudded so loud I could feel it in my throat. Then I pressed the gas again, forcing myself to pick up speed, telling myself not to look too hard. But I did look. My mirrors caught a glimpse as I passed. For just a split second, the beam of my taillights hit the open trunk, and I swore I saw the pale curve of an arm hanging at the wrong angle. I didn't slow again. I didn't stop. My body went cold, my knuckles bone white on the wheel, and I kept driving like the road itself might collapse if I hesitated. I wanted so badly to convince myself I had imagined it, that it was just a trick of the light, but deep down I knew I hadn't. The road twisted and turned, mile after mile, and the silence in the car grew heavier. Every dark patch ahead looked like another trap, another abandoned car, another glimpse of something I wasn't supposed to see. I thought about pulling over and calling the police, but the idea of stopping out there, with nothing but black trees pressing against the road, froze me. I kept thinking about that online post again, about someone who didn't post, didn't share, didn't brag. Someone who moved through the world quietly, leaving no trail. Someone like that could dump a body on a back road, set up fake breakdowns, leave traps for anyone foolish enough to stop. And nobody would know who they were because they didn't exist online. They'd be a ghost in a world obsessed with being seen. By the time I saw headlights behind me, I was already on edge. They appeared suddenly, far too bright, closing the distance fast. My chest tightened, and I pressed the gas a little harder, watching as the car grew larger in the mirror. It was a beat-up sedan, dark-colored, nothing special, but it was gaining on me. I told myself it was just another driver, maybe someone in a hurry, but the speed of it, the way it hugged my lane without pulling to pass, made me sick with dread. For a few minutes, it stayed right behind me, so close I could see the reflection of its lights bouncing around the inside of my car. Finally, after what felt like forever, it backed off. Not by much, but enough that I could breathe again. Still, it followed me. Every curve, every stretch of straight highway, it stayed there. Not trying to pass, not falling away, just following. My mind wouldn't stop running circles. What if it was connected to the cars I'd seen? What if whoever was out there had noticed me, knew I'd driven past, knew I'd seen too much? I gripped the wheel harder and focused on the road, refusing to glance at the mirror more than I had to. When I finally reached the turnoff toward my town, the car behind me slowed and kept going straight. I sat there at the stop sign for a full minute after it passed, my breathing shaky, my body trembling like I just finished running. The relief was overwhelming, but it didn't erase the images burned into my head. The abandoned cars, the open trunk, that pale shape. When I finally made it home, I didn't go straight inside. I sat in the driveway with the engine off and the lights out, staring into the dark, half expecting those headlights to appear again. The house felt safe, but the road was still out there, stretching into the black, holding its secrets. Lying in bed later, I thought again about that post. The perfect crime wasn't brilliant, wasn't flashy. It was just silence. No trail, no posts, nothing for people to latch onto. And out on that highway, with nothing but empty cars and a dark forest, I realized I might have brushed right up against someone living that silence. Someone who had no name, no face, no trail. Just shadows and bodies no one would ever see online. The scariest part was knowing that I would never know for sure. I could call the police, report what I'd seen, but even if they found something, even if it was real, the person behind it would vanish again. Because they weren't online. They weren't posting. They weren't leaving any proof behind. And that was the thought that kept me awake for the rest of the night. That the perfect crime wasn't out there in the shadows waiting for me. It was already happening, quiet and unseen, while the rest of the world was too busy watching their own screens to notice. I was driving late one night on a back road near Brookville, Indiana, the kind of road you only end up on if you live out there or if you've taken a wrong turn. I knew the area well enough, but even so, the farther I went, the darker it seemed to get. It was one of those nights where the sky was clouded over, so the moon and stars weren't giving me any help. My headlights were the only light cutting through the black. The pavement was narrow, no lines painted down the middle, and both sides of the road were crowded with cornfields that stretched out into the dark. Tall stalks swayed against the night air, brushing together in waves that looked like moving shadows. There weren't any houses close by, no streetlights, not even the glow of a barn light off in the distance. It was just me, the car, the narrow strip of road, and the walls of corn. Driving alone at night through farmland always puts me on edge. Cornfields are strange like that. During the day, they look harmless, just rows of plants standing in neat order. At night, though, they feel alive. The stalks look taller than they should, The rows vanish into endless tunnels of black, and you can't help but think about what could be moving inside them. The sound of them brushing together makes you think someone's following you just out of sight. I was doing about 50, trying to keep my eyes fixed ahead, when I noticed something on the shoulder up ahead. At first, it just looked like a shape leaning out of the corn, but the second I saw it, my chest tightened. It wasn't moving, and it was right on the edge of the road where the gravel met the asphalt. The shape stuck out in a way that didn't fit with the stalks, like it was waiting. My headlights stretched farther as I got closer, and the details started to form. The outline was wrong for a person, too stiff, too sharp. Its arms stuck out at angles, its head sat slouched on its shoulders, and as soon as the light hit it clearly, I realized what I was looking at. A scarecrow. It was leaning out of the corn, one arm stuck forward like it had been pushed into the row at an angle. Its hat was slouched low over its head, and its body was stuffed into old clothes that sagged against the frame of whatever poles or sticks were holding it together. The way it jutted out of the corn made it look like it was reaching for the road. Even though I understood what it was, my whole body tensed up. I had that instinctual jolt of fear, the kind that doesn't care about reason. Something about the way it leaned forward made it feel like it wasn't supposed to be there, like it had broken free from its post and crept out to the edge. For a second, I even thought I saw its head tilt slightly in the light, but I knew that had to be the way the car's motion and shadows played tricks on me. I pressed harder on the gas without even realizing it, my hands gripping the wheel tighter. The car hummed as it picked up speed, and I kept my eyes locked straight ahead, refusing to look at it as I passed. I felt the weight of it in my peripheral vision as the headlights lit it up fully for a second. Its shadow stretched long across the asphalt, and then it vanished behind me as quickly as it had appeared. The silence inside the car was deafening after that. I didn't want to look in the mirror. I didn't want to see it still standing there, or worse, not standing there anymore. My chest felt tight, my heart hammering, and all I could do was keep driving forward. The cornfields didn't end for miles, and every stalk along the roadside looked like it could be hiding another one of those figures, leaning just far enough into the road to catch my headlights. I tried to calm myself down by reasoning it through. Farmers put scarecrows in their fields all the time, and sometimes they leaned at weird angles. That was all it was, just bad placement, maybe pushed over by wind or knocked crooked when someone set it up. But the thing was, I'd driven that same road plenty of times, and I had never seen a scarecrow set up that close to the shoulder before. Usually they stood deeper in the fields, centered where they could overlook the crops. This one felt wrong, like it had been placed there deliberately, right on the edge where passing drivers would see it. The more I thought about it, the worse the feeling got. Someone had dragged it out there, positioned it so it leaned toward the road. Whether it was just a weird choice or someone trying to mess with people, I couldn't know. But I kept picturing what it looked like when my headlights hit it. Looming, stiff, arms jutting forward like it was about to step out in front of me. I kept driving mile after mile, waiting for another one to appear. My hands stayed locked on the wheel, and every set of shadows in the corn made me flinch. By the time I hit the outskirts of town and finally saw the glow of streetlights in the distance, my chest felt sore from how hard I'd been breathing. When I got home, I pulled into the driveway and shut off the car, but I didn't get out right away. I sat there in the quiet, replaying the sight of that scarecrow in my mind. The way it leaned, the way its shadow stretched across the road, the way it seemed out of place. Even though I knew it was just cloth and straw on a frame, I couldn't shake the image. The more I thought about it, the more unsettling it became. Not because it was alive or anything like that, but because of the intention behind it. Someone had put it there. Someone had decided it belonged leaning out of the corn, staring down the road in the middle of the night. Maybe it was nothing, just a careless placement. But maybe it was meant to startle drivers like me. And if that was the case, it had worked. That night, I realized something important. Out on those back roads, it doesn't take much to shake you. It doesn't take monsters or ghosts or anything supernatural. All it takes is something out of place, something that doesn't belong, standing too close to the edge of the dark. Even something as simple as a scarecrow can leave you gripping the wheel, heart racing, driving faster than you should just to get away from it. And that's what stuck with me most when I finally lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling and listening to the house creak around me. The scarecrow hadn't followed me home. It hadn't moved. It was just standing there on the side of the road where someone had left it. But the unease it left behind stayed with me long after, and I knew the next time I drove past those cornfields at night, I'd be watching the shadows even closer, because once you've seen something out of place in the dark, you can't forget it. I was driving late at night, something I usually tried to avoid but couldn't get around this time. I had been visiting a relative out in a small town and lost track of time, so by the time I got on the road, it was already past midnight. The highway stretched in front of me like a black ribbon, empty except for the occasional truck that thundered by in the opposite direction. My headlights carved out a tunnel through the darkness, but beyond that beam of light, the night was thick and endless. The road was narrow and wound through wooded hills. No streetlights, no houses, not even reflectors on the shoulders for long stretches. Just a line of cracked pavement and the whisper of trees on either side. My car hummed steadily, the tires making that low rolling sound that mixes with the faint whine of the engine. Inside, it was warm from the heater, but I couldn't shake the unease that came with driving alone so late. At first, everything was uneventful. I watched the dashed lines roll past under my headlights, my hands steady on the wheel, trying to stay focused. I wasn't sleepy, but the isolation weighed on me. It felt like I was driving deeper into nowhere, every mile pulling me further from safety. My phone had no service bars, something I realized only when I tried to play some music. The silence of the cabin, broken only by the engine, started to feel louder than noise. About 40 minutes into the drive, I noticed something odd up ahead. At first, I thought it was just a shadow from the trees, but as I got closer, I saw it was a car pulled off on the side of the road. The hazard lights weren't on. The shape sat in the grass with its nose angled slightly toward the ditch. One headlight busted out. As I passed, I saw the driver's side door was wide open. The sight jolted me. An empty car, door left open in the middle of nowhere, late at night. It didn't sit right. I slowed down for a second, debating if I should stop, but everything in me told me not to. If someone needed help, they weren't anywhere in sight, and I wasn't about to pull over in the dark with no phone signal. I pressed the gas and kept going, watching my rearview mirror until the car disappeared behind me. The uneasiness grew after that. Every curve in the road felt sharper, every shadow between the trees deeper. My headlights kept picking up little things that made my heart jump. Fallen branches, shapes of rocks, the eyes of deer reflecting white in the distance. My grip on the steering wheel got tighter. After another half hour, I started to feel like I wasn't alone on the road. At first, it was subtle, just that instinctive sense that something is behind you. I checked my mirrors over and over, but there was nothing. Just empty road stretching out behind, the faint glimmer of my taillights on the asphalt. Then I saw it. A pair of headlights appeared way back, just as I came around a bend. I felt a small relief at first. Another car meant I wasn't completely isolated. But that relief didn't last. The headlights stayed far behind, not gaining, not falling back, just keeping a steady distance. I drove for miles like that, watching those lights follow me. The more I glanced back, the more it gnawed at me. Why weren't they passing? Why keep the same distance? I tried to tell myself it was just someone else heading the same way, maybe cautious about driving too fast on the twisting road. But the thought didn't calm me. I pressed the accelerator, picking up speed. The road was winding, but I knew it well enough to push a little harder. For a few minutes, I thought I'd pulled away. The headlights disappeared around a curve, but soon enough they reappeared, still holding that same gap. It was like whoever was behind me was making sure I never lost sight of them. My chest felt tight. I turned off my high beams for a moment, just to check if I could see their car better in the darkness. All I could make out was the outline of a vehicle, maybe a sedan, but it was too far back to be sure. I flicked my brights back on, the road glaring white ahead. The woods pressed closer the further I went. The trees leaned in, their bare branches tangling over the road like skeletal arms. My mind kept wandering back to that abandoned car, the open door, the darkness beyond the ditch. I couldn't shake the thought that maybe it wasn't just coincidence. About 15 minutes later, the road split. To the left, the main highway continued toward the city. To the right, a smaller county road cut through farmland and eventually joined up again. I made a sudden decision and turned right, hoping to lose whoever was behind me. The road narrowed immediately, no markings, just cracked pavement bordered by weeds and fields. For a minute, I thought I'd done it. I checked my mirror, no headlights. The relief washed over me, but only for a moment, because when I rounded the next bend, I saw them again. The same headlights, appearing in the distance like they'd been waiting. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. I pressed harder on the gas, my tires buzzing over the uneven surface. The road dipped and rose, curving past barns and dark fields. Every time I glanced back, the headlights were still there, never closer, never farther, just steady. My mouth was dry, palms slick on the wheel. I kept telling myself not to panic, that maybe it was all in my head, that it was just some late-night driver with nowhere else to be. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I drove like that for nearly half an hour, pushing my car harder than I should have on those roads. At last, I saw the faint glow of the town's edge ahead, the orange haze of streetlights breaking through the dark sky. I almost laughed from the relief. I slowed down slightly as I came into the outskirts, houses appearing here and there, street lamps casting cones of yellow light on the pavement. When I looked in my mirror, the headlights were gone. Just like that, no car turned off, no sign of brake lights, nothing. One moment they were behind me, the next, nothing but empty road. I kept driving until I pulled into a gas station near the center of town. I sat there for a while, engine running, trying to calm my hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I looked around the lot, scanning every passing car, but none of them matched what I thought I'd seen. I don't know if it was someone messing with me, or if it was just my nerves making a normal situation feel wrong. But the thing that haunts me most is the way that other car matched me. Mile for mile, curve for curve, never closer, never farther. Like they were waiting, like they wanted me to know they were there. Even now, whenever I drive alone at night, I catch myself staring too long at the mirrors, waiting for headlights to appear and hold their place behind me. I was on the road later than I should have been. It wasn't the kind of night I wanted to drive through. The sky was heavy and black, clouds hanging low so there wasn't even moonlight to soften the darkness. I had been working all day out of town, and I just wanted to get home. I told myself it would be fine, just a 2-hour drive on mostly empty highways, but as soon as I got going, I knew it was going to test me. The highway stretched out ahead of me, one long strip of cracked pavement with my headlights carving a pale tunnel through the black. On either side, the land rolled away into fields and patches of woods, but in the dark they might as well have been endless voids. My headlights lit the weeds at the edge of the shoulder and the white paint lines, but beyond that was nothing. I kept both hands firm on the wheel, trying not to think too much, just focusing on staying steady in my lane. For the first half hour, I saw almost no one. A couple of semis passed going the other direction, their lights exploding across my windshield before vanishing in the mirrors. Each time it was like a quick flash of reality, a reminder that there were still other people out there, but the silence after they were gone felt even heavier. My car hummed, the tires droning on the rough pavement, and every bump in the road sent a faint vibration through the steering wheel. The empty feeling out there got under my skin. I kept glancing into the mirrors even though I knew nothing was behind me. My taillights glowed red in the dark and then fell away into nothingness. The more I stared, the more it felt like something might suddenly appear, so I forced myself to keep my eyes forward. About 40 miles in, I noticed something strange. The road dipped into a stretch of trees, the kind that close in so tight they block out the sky. Just before I entered that section, I saw a car pulled over on the shoulder. First, I thought someone had broken down. The car's hood was up, and the driver's door hung wide open, but there were no hazard lights blinking, no movement around it. Just a silent car half in the grass, one headlight smashed in. The sight made my chest tighten. An abandoned car on the side of a road that empty, with the door left open, didn't feel right. I slowed a little as I passed, leaning slightly to glance inside as my headlights swept over it. The interior looked empty, no one in the seats. I couldn't see much beyond that. My first instinct was to think someone might be in trouble, but another part of me, the louder part, told me not to stop. Not out here, not with no phone service and nothing but black woods on either side. I pressed the gas and kept going, forcing myself not to check the mirrors until it was long behind me. But my nerves were awake now. The woods on either side seemed darker, heavier. My high beams lit up the road but also made every tree trunk leap into sharp contrast, like 1,000 thin figures standing shoulder to shoulder. My knuckles tightened on the wheel. After another 15 minutes, I got the feeling I wasn't alone anymore. It wasn't anything obvious, just that creeping instinct you get sometimes. I flicked my eyes up to the rearview mirror, and my stomach sank. A pair of headlights had appeared far back on the road. They were small, faint, but definitely there. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just another late-night driver heading the same way. But the lights didn't move the way I expected. They didn't get closer, they didn't fall behind. They stayed at the same distance, no matter if I sped up a little or slowed down. I tried to ignore it. I focused on the dashed lines ticking by, on the sound of the engine, on anything but the steady glow behind me. But the longer it went on, the more it got into my head. Why weren't they passing? Why weren't they falling back? It felt deliberate, like they were choosing to hang back just far enough for me to see them. I pressed my foot down, letting the car push up 10 miles over the limit. The tires hummed louder, the road seemed to whip by faster, and for a minute the lights dipped behind a hill. Relief flickered through me, but then they reappeared. Same distance, same glow. By then my heart was beating hard. The steering wheel felt slick in my palms. I couldn't shake the thought that whoever was back there was following me on purpose. I didn't know why, but I couldn't think of another explanation. The highway eventually hit a fork. To the left, the main route led toward bigger towns and the interstate. To the right, a smaller county road cut through farmland and curved back toward home. On impulse, I took the right. My tires bumped over the uneven joint where the pavement changed, and suddenly I was on a narrower, darker road with no painted lines and weeds creeping onto the shoulder. For a moment, I thought I'd shaken them. The headlights didn't appear behind me when I glanced back. My chest eased a little, my grip loosening. I told myself I had just been paranoid, that maybe they weren't following me at all and had just stayed on the highway. But a few bends later, I saw them again. Two faint orbs of light on the horizon behind me, creeping into view as if they had been waiting for me to notice. I felt a cold rush in my gut. It wasn't coincidence. I pressed harder on the gas, my car rattling as it climbed in speed. The road was rough and curved often, lined with fields and the occasional fence post glinting in my headlights. I knew I shouldn't drive too fast here, but I couldn't stop myself. Every time I checked the mirror, those lights were still there, never closer, never farther. By the time I saw the faint orange glow of the town ahead, I was gripping the wheel so hard my hands ached. The streetlights looked like safety, little pools of civilization waiting for me. I slowed as I entered the first streets, the houses appearing, porches dark, yards empty. I flicked my eyes up one more time to the mirror. The headlights were gone, just gone. No slow turn-off, no brake lights fading away. One moment they were there, steady as ever, and the next the road behind me was empty. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station near the center of town. I pulled up under the fluorescent lights, put the car in park, and just sat there for a long while, engine running. My hands were trembling so badly I had to wipe them on my jeans. I kept looking around the lot, waiting for a car to pull in behind me, but none did. Even now, I don't know what to make of it. Maybe it was someone messing around. Maybe it was nothing at all. But the way they matched me for mile after mile, holding that same distance, made it feel deliberate. And the way they vanished as soon as I hit town still makes my skin crawl. To this day, I can't drive a back road at night without checking my mirrors too much. I keep waiting for those headlights to reappear, steady and patient, just far enough back to remind me I'm not alone.